And, it's been said that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I had quite a bit of learning to do with the idea of working with a team and supporting them. I went in feeling that my drive and enthusiasm would be contagious and self-evident, and really didn't worry about other people's needs. And so that was a very important lesson that I learned, fortunately, and it has informed my formulation of the Persuasion Blueprint, which is all about recognizing the fact that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that caring is the first of the three components of the circle of persuasion, the other two being connection and collaboration.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about persuasion and high trust communication. I'm delighted to welcome Danny Bobrow. Danny is an ultra-endurance athlete, mountaineer, and the creator of the Persuasion Blueprint. You can learn more about Danny and the Persuasion Blueprint at his website, dannybobrow.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Danny. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
So am I, Linda. Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine.
Well, I'm glad that we're having this conversation. And I love that true principles can kind of cross boundaries, where we can be talking about communication, and this applies to business, but that's not where your blueprint and the idea of it got started. It got started in you doing what you love, and that's being outdoors and doing this high adventure and these endurance races. Would you be willing to share that story?
Well, sure, I'd be delighted to. And you're right. It's the skills that I offer are applicable to any situation. And yes, my unique approach was forged in the crucible of some rather challenging conditions as a mountaineer and adventure racer. And I guess maybe to step even a little bit farther back with my origin story, I'm 68 years old. I was born with a congenital visual impairment, which left me blind or started me out blind in my left eye and marginally correctable in the right. And so I had some challenges understanding kind of where my place was in the world, because I felt that I was an intelligent individual with athletic ability, and yet I had no evidence to back up either of those beliefs. And so it took a while, but eventually I was given reading glasses and began to excel academically once I got out of high school. And before I got out of high school, I was taught a very important lesson by my high school gym teacher, Mr. Rusk. And he taught me the concept of the psychological fatigue barrier, which is something I'd never heard from anyone else before or since. And it simply holds that our mind holds us back. It keeps us from doing things, tells us to quit long before we really need to. And in that moment, something clicked for me, and I got involved in martial arts and then triathlons and endurance sports, mountaineering, and that taught me that I was a persistent, resilient individual after all, whereas previously I'd been a quitter. But what I had not yet learned was the team dynamic. And, it's been said that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I had quite a bit of learning to do with the idea of working with a team and supporting them. I went in feeling that my drive and enthusiasm would be contagious and self-evident, and really didn't worry about other people's needs. And so that was a very important lesson that I learned, fortunately, and it has informed my formulation of the Persuasion Blueprint, which is all about recognizing the fact that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that caring is the first of the three components of the circle of persuasion, the other two being connection and collaboration.
Okay, so are you done with the backup? Because you didn't get to the part of the story that I was expecting, but I loved all of the things that you shared. because
Well,
this
I
is
thought I talked
information that
enough.
I didn't have. So I would love to before okay, let's pause for a second before we
Sure.
get to kind of a pivotal moment. So you've shared with us a little bit of background. What I know about you is that you are this amazing ultra endurance athlete, and that means you push beyond beyond what your body wants to do, beyond what some people even think your body can do. And you've taken us back in time and said, okay, let me tell you a little bit about me. That's not how I started. First of all, I struggled physically with my vision. And I think that having a problem with vision would really impact any type of athletics that you're planning to do. So I'm going to ask, did glasses correct that or did you require surgery?
No, neither. What I have is uncorrectable, and that's why I gravitated towards individual sports that didn't involve a projectile. So I didn't
What?
didn't have a lot of experience with teams, and that's why I got involved in martial arts and then triathlon, and only through mountaineering did I begin to work with teams because you're not usually solo mountaineering. You need a team. So that was the moment of truth for me. And
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, my mind is blown just a little bit. Non-correctable, this is what it is. But you said that one eye was blind and one eye was marginally correctable. That affects your depth perception. That's why you said not a ball.
correct. That's right.
Mountains also are 3D. I mean, if
They
you're
are.
if you're not in the right place, aren't you going to fall?
Yes. No, you need to, although, that's why ice climbing was my favorite form of climbing because it was far more tactile than visual. You really climb ice based on how it feels more than what it looks like. Uh, but I,
Wow.
but I've done rock climbing and often, yeah, I'm not usually the team leader because of my vision issues. Although I did summit Aconcagua solo, which was my fourth attempt in 12 years. So, uh, I've been fortunate. I try to be measured in the risks that I take, but I think I've been lucky in many situations.
Okay. Wow. All right. So now I can see you in a whole new light. So now when you accomplish things, it's like an extra measure of difficulty than maybe someone who has perfect vision. So you are giving above and beyond in order to even be on equal footing. That's amazing. Okay, now you also said as you were giving this backstory about this experience you had with a gym teacher. And who'd have
Hmm.
thought that a gym teacher is the one who just says that exact right thing that changes everything? And the concept of psychological fatigue. So let's talk about that a little bit more. We
Sure.
feel like we need to quit before we actually need to quit.
Right.
And so we do. We quit. And you said that you considered yourself a quitter. It's like, well, that's where I'm going to stop. And then did that realization that there is this phenomenon where your brain says quit when you don't have to, and you said, hey, then I'm not going to quit. I'm going to
Then I have a
go.
choice, is what it was an
I
amazing
have a
lifted,
choice.
it was a revelation to me. It was like a
Ooh.
weight being lifted off of my body. That and the first thing I did was uh, we had some competition to see how many sit-ups you could do in 2 minutes, I think, and I set the school record. And it was like in a matter of a
Did
week of hearing
you?
this. Yeah.
Wow. So as soon as you heard that, as soon as you realized I have a choice, I don't have to quit because my body says it's time to quit, then you said, well, then I'm going to keep going. Is that correct?
That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Yes.
Wow. And that has been your, I don't know, motto that you carry now for everything as you keep going.
It
It's
it really
I
is. Yeah. The other thing it taught me, and you mentioned it, is that you never know what you do or say that will influence someone. So, uh, I'm a ski instructor also, and it's very gratifying. And you can see that people that they learn really in stair steps. They have epiphanies. They keep hammering away at something, and all of a sudden it's just I get it, and it's so gratifying to see that in other people too.
yes, that aha moment. That is the, I don't know, payday for any kind of teacher is you share, you try to help people, And then sometimes you see eyes light up. You see a
Exactly.
change where it's like, oh, and those moments are so satisfying. It feels like, wow, I made a difference today. There's something. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So now here we are. We are Danny. We're a little kid. We're growing up. We have our challenges. We think, man, for me, it's just easier if I do it by myself because team sports involve balls. And then you discovered that there are team sports that don't involve balls. And so you started climbing. And now when you work with other people, it can be a challenge because everybody brings uh, their own ideas, their own skill set, their own mental idea. They might be in that state of psychological fatigue where they say, I'm done. And you're thinking, but the race isn't over, right?
Absolutely correct. That's the situation. And you know, those intense situations, they bring out the best and sometimes the worst in people. And you know, it just taught me about positive mental attitude and how when you're feeling sorry for yourself, and I learned this from a fellow climber, when I was really dragging it on one particular climb, Kilimanjaro, as a matter of fact. He said, what I find is when I'm really feeling down and low, I look at somebody else who needs help and I think about what I can do for them. And that was another epiphany, which is, you know, we're raised in this society to follow the golden rule, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and that it's better to give than to receive. And frankly, I grew up thinking that these were kind of platitudes or just techniques that were intended to keep members of society from killing each other. And
Which
then
is useful in and of itself.
but then by practicing those behaviors, I found no, it's actually is better to give than to receive. And when you really worry about somebody else more than yourself, that elevates the whole team. And you know, nobody cares about your vision until they know that you care about theirs and that you can demonstrate that you really care about them, that you don't just say it, but you demonstrate it. And so it's all about pacing and recognizing that each of us will take turns being the weak link in the team from time to time in any event that's long enough. And that when you show love for your fellow team member, the team moves faster. Maybe not in that moment, but it's time well spent to find out what a person's needs are and to let them know that they're loved and cared about. And this is equally applicable in the business world and outside of the mountains, no question about it.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say it's applicable in life because every single person on this planet wants to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to know that we matter to someone, that they care about us. It is one of our deepest core needs. And it is very challenging to have that need filled when most people are trying to take care of themselves. So I
Right.
loved how you said, okay, we hear these things like the golden rule and better to give than receive. And we think, yeah, those are good things. I can see how that makes kind of the world a better place. You don't kill each other. But now you're saying through your experience, you recognized, wow, these things not only benefit the person that I am giving to, the person that I am seeing and hearing and valuing, it actually benefits me, especially in a situation where we are a team. And hopefully, we're in a team in many different circumstances. We're in a team in an athletic event. We are in a team in a work setting. We are in a team as a family. In fact, if we're not at a team with someone in some form, we aren't able to really communicate or help each other or work or do. It's necessary to make a connection.
Well, it is for most people, and that was the thing. I was a people person who didn't have the skills to really connect and develop deep relationships, and I always missed that. So this was a wonderful gift to myself when I realized what was involved with connecting with other people, and I learned it in some rather difficult settings. I've made mistakes. I've burned bridges, and the real other another epiphany for me was recognizing that those were all teachable moments that led me to where I am today, to the point where I can help people maybe avoid making mistakes that I made. Those were some of the best lessons that I ever got.
Isn't that wonderful that we can learn from our mistakes and we don't have to make every single mistake in order to learn? And that's part of why we're having these conversations is to say, hey, I learned something, and this thing not only can benefit me, but it can benefit you, and I can save you a few steps. So let's help people be able to understand the difference between the idea of convincing to persuading. So let's just put ourselves back into, okay, we're a team. We are trying to do this endurance run, and the whole team has to make it in order for us to cross the finish line for it to count.
Hmm.
And my teammate is exhausted, tired, wants to quit. They're done. Well, the bad news is if they quit, I'm done too. I need them to get moving, but I can't carry them. So many people would think, well, I've got to convince them to keep going. Is that going to help?
Sometimes not. Now, depending on the race, you are right. If it's an adventure race and a team member quits, then the whole team is DQ'd, disqualified. Um, and I had a situation in Utah, actually, which we were just talking about. It was the Four Winds Adventure Race. It was this 350-mile, 6-day race, started in Snowbird. And it involved a lot of different events. And it had to be a two-gender team. So we had a female who had stepped up and was amazing. Had never done an adventure race before, and this is like one of the granddaddies. This is like Eco Challenge. And 2 days into the race, she was really flagging, and I, had learned enough by this point that just saying, "Come on, we got to keep going," and just pushing her was not going to work. And so, we sat down and actually, I asked her on numerous occasions, but we just sat down and said, all right, hold on, let's just take a breather. We all could use a break, tell me what's going on. And, just the fact that we had that conversation, she knew that I wasn't putting the goal to supersede the needs of the team. And we did some technical things, like I pushed her bike for a while in addition to my own, instead of riding it. I rode my bike and then pushed her bike along, and another teammate took her pack. And then, we stopped frequently for water breaks, and she appreciated it. But every event, as I mentioned earlier, that's long enough, you're going to have a situation where somebody's going to have a need. They're going to raise their hand and they're going to need to slow down or rest. And you just got to keep the big picture and work it. You're only going to move as fast as your slowest team member. And if taking weight off that team member's pack, often people resist that because it bruises their ego. And in those situations, you remind them and say, look, we're a team and we're all here to help each other. So the goal is to move forward. And as long as we're moving, we're winning. And just keep it positive. And a sense of humor comes in handy too. Rarely am I the strongest person on the team, but I'm usually the funniest. And that's why people
And
keep
that
me
can be
around.
very helpful. So that's why you're on the team, is so you can keep everybody
I'm the
in a
comic
positive
relief.
mood. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Okay, so now we're in this 6-day race. We're moving, and I've got somebody who's tired and exhausted. And the truth of the matter is, if they quit, we're all disqualified. I really need you to keep up your end of the bargain. And some of the natural knee-jerk responses are to complain or belittle or, just tell them to keep going.
Tough it out. Right.
Yeah, and to just poke and prod. And you're saying, okay, that is a natural response, but it's also a very ineffective way to do things. I'm sure that there aren't good feelings in the team if you're doing that. It can cause resentment. But
That's
if I
right.
turn it around and say, we're a team, I care about you, I care about how you're doing, and how can I help you? And you helped multiple ways. You helped physically by pushing a bike. You helped by carrying backpacks, those kinds of things. But that wasn't the only assistance. You stopped and listened. So I would like to hear how this turned out. Did she get up? Did she keep going? Did you finish?
Yes, yes, and yes. And what we did, and the sign of a good leader is to know when he or she is pulling everything possible from the individual. And I had made the observation, the determination that this team member was doing everything that she could with what she had. We had done a marathon like 3 days before, and no, we had done Climb for a Cause. We climbed the Grand Teton like 3 days before. Then we did this adventure race, and then we did a marathon a week after that because I paced her. But so I knew kind of where she was physically and what she was capable of, and I knew this wasn't a psychological fatigue barrier issue for her. She was giving her all. So at that point, the decision is made that, well, you know what, the team's going to have to slow down a little bit. Just because 3/4 of the team is able to move at one pace and 1/4 can't, that means the team can't, or the team shouldn't try. We calibrated. We adjusted our pace. We took more frequent rests, but the good news is that we finished the race, and that was one of the more notable achievements in my racing career.
That is fantastic. And I cannot believe you did those three things back to back. That is, to me, insane. But what I think I'm hearing is that not only did you help physically, and not only did you help with that listening, but you took the time to know her and to know what her abilities were, and that's quite beautiful. And that you were able to, I mean, at that point, just saying, hey, keep up, keep going, when someone is not at that psychological fatigue, but it's actual physical limitation, um, there isn't any talking that you could do, or beating somebody up in some form to make a change.
Right. And
So
I learned that from previous negative experiences where I tried to do just that, and those races did not end very well. So, uh,
no.
but I learned, from that, and basically, I think I mentioned the psychological fatigue barrier taught me to be persistent and resilient. But what I realized is that if you want to go far with a team, you need to practice patient persistence and respectful resilience.
Okay.
That was the switch, the shift for me.
Okay. And that is, there are three things that are super important that we want to make sure that we cover. And one is the distinction between convincing and persuading. Two, the power of persistence and patience. And three, the necessity of respectful resilience. So let's go over each of those, please. Let's talk about the first one. Probably there are people who still don't have it clear in their minds. What is the difference between
Sure.
convincing and
Right. Well,
persuasion?
persuasion, first of all, I like to define that so people are clear because people sometimes hear persuasion like they hear sales. They think it's manipulative or coercive.
Hmm.
And, persuasion to me is just a series of skills and mindsets that are used to influence people to take a desirable form of action. And in that regard, it's the most honest form of communication because if your goal is to help your counterpart, then persuasion is all about setting the table for success in communication through the caring, connection, and collaboration components. But I distinguish persuasion from convincing in that convincing is more influencing somebody's opinions, attitudes, and beliefs, whereas persuasion is influencing their behavior. So it's a little bit more. It's more where the rubber hits the road, if you will, because you can tell somebody that they need to get in shape or that they should lose weight, achieve a better body mass index, and they may not in agreement, but they're not necessarily going to take action. So, true persuasion involves more work, I think.
It sounds like it has more results.
Correct.
I
Tangible results.
Yes, and I loved how you brought in the idea that persuasion could be seen as a form of manipulation. That we're trying to get someone to see and understand what we're trying to explain, and I don't like to feel like I'm being manipulated. In fact, it feels my guard immediately goes up. So how do you make sure that we're not going in that direction? That
Right.
by showing that you care. I love that you brought in the idea that this is trust communication. That when you say something, I can trust you, and that matters because again, I think for most of us, our guard immediately goes up when there's anything where we start with a different opinion or mindset. The feeling is, I got to put my guard up to protect myself because you're going to try to manipulate, you're going to do something to try to make me change. And I don't want to change. So how do we get past that?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Because what you're touching upon, first of all, every interaction has a beginning, and depending on how that interaction began, there may be the filters, the guards, the shields that you're mentioning. And that reminds me of an article that I read, and I think the title of it was "Don't Bring Facts to a Feelings Fight." And her whole premise is that if you want to effectively communicate with somebody, persuasively or otherwise, you need to attune to where they are emotionally. In other words, to identify what emotional ecosystem do they inhabit. So in a given subject, if you want to talk about the Mideast conflict with somebody and they are along this continuum where their identity is firmly bound up with their viewpoint and they have very firm feelings about it, then if they're dogmatic, then there's really no point in engaging in a factual exchange with them. The best you can do is to show them dignity and to perhaps plant some seeds for them to consider their viewpoint. This is important that you understand your own emotional ecosystem too, which will vary depending on the subject. Because if you're very close to a subject that you're not open to hearing opposing views, then again, you're going to have a difficult time persuading anybody about anything if you're not able to do it in a dispassionate way. But in general, the persuasion blueprint is informed by those three C's that I've mentioned, I believe, of caring, connection, and collaboration. You've got to set the stage by first and foremost letting this person know that you care and are not in a position, you're not trying to coerce them in any way. The whole premise of the persuasion blueprint is that people make decisions based on emotion and then tend to justify it with logic because we all want to be, in control and feel that we're behaving in a rational way. But that's not the way the brain is. That's not the brain's architecture. We're all sort of living to a large extent to this day with lizard brains that are dominated largely by the limbic system, which is all about identifying threat. And so a lot of the coaching that I do is to help people sort of get out of their limbic system and into their prefrontal cortex where rational cognitive thought and action can take place. But that's done by putting people's hearts before their minds at ease by letting them know that you're an empathetic individual who understands their feelings and cares about their feelings. And that sets the stage for the next step in persuasive communication, which is making the connection. And that's about establishing credibility and earning trust, which you mentioned earlier. And you do that not so much by demonstrating, people tend to emphasize the establishing credibility component when it's been shown time and again that people are more concerned with believing that you understand them and get their problem and perhaps can articulate their problem even better than they can. And that's how you get them to open up to hearing about your credentials and your solution. So that's another distinction. And I call these two challenges in terms of caring bridging the care gap, because there's a difference between your intentions and how people perceive you. Most people are caring individuals. The challenge is they may not have mastered the means to convey that caring in an obvious way to their counterpart. And similarly, there's a trust gap where, people believe that their talent and credibility should be self-evident when the counterpart is really looking for more. Well, I want to be convinced that you get me. I want to be persuaded that you get me, before we even move on to the solution component, which is the collaboration part of persuasion. And the collaboration part, briefly, is getting your counterpart to the same side of the table as you are in crafting the solution together. Because again, studies have shown that the person who feels that they had a part in the crafting of the solution has a greater sense of agency and ownership in seeing that solution brought to fruition, and they're less likely to second guess that solution. So again, a lot of people of high caliber and high competency tend to engage in what I call expert override, where in they're delivering their solution and they think it's self-evident. They've done it a million times before. They don't really allow the person to ask questions or interrupt. They feel that that's an interruption to their flow, when what they need to do is slow down, ask questions, get confirmation from their prospective client, customer, patient, or whoever their counterpart is, that yeah, this makes sense to me, and yeah, I can tell that you're customizing the approach based on my unique needs.
Yes, that's beautiful. I loved how you brought that in together, and I appreciate that. This is where the rubber hits the road. We need to be able to apply this in any different scenario. And if you're in a business scenario and I'm the expert and I'm trying to say, hey, I'm the expert, I have the solution you need. And the person on the other end is thinking, do you even understand my needs?
Right? You even get it.
How do I know that you are how can you just give a blanket, I have the solution, when you're not, I'm not convinced you understand what the problem is. And so by slowing down and helping to get to that point, that bridge of, oh, I see. You do understand what my issues are. You are listening to me. And once I feel that I'm listened to, now I'm ready to start listening. So
Exactly. You're setting
that
the
matters.
table, setting
Hmm.
a table for understanding. And part of the skill is knowing to read those cues that you're getting from your counterpart too. They can be verbal, they can be visual, they can be very subtle. Just an eye opening widely, or somebody nodding or somebody saying, "Yes, that's right." Those are gold. And we talk a lot about listening skills, because I think listening is a dying art in our society, and we can talk about the reasons for that. But often when people are supposed to be listening, they're just sitting quietly waiting for an opportunity to say what's on their mind. Or and we go through these exercises. There are 8, I think, communication killers related to listening, and that's just one of them. A lot of people feel that to demonstrate that they understand the other person, they'll relate a similar story as soon as the person finishes their story. And sometimes they're one-upping the other person. They talk about their vacation. They talk about their vacation to California, and then you talk about your vacation to Hawaii. And you think, yeah, we're having a nice little conversation, but what you've done is you've sort of invalidated them. So listening and the responses, the timing, the silence, the giving the person an opportunity to process, the resisting the urge to fix a problem that the person may not be sharing because they want it to be fixed. They may just want to be heard and validated. Those are pitfalls and minefields that are, so subtle. Sometimes, you may have a relationship with someone that doesn't seem very deep, and or you may know people that like this, and And the reason that the relationship never went any deeper is because the one of the counterparts, the person in this interaction, in this relationship, is continuously doing one of these things, trying to fix a problem, trying to give advice that hasn't been asked for, uh, one-upping them, finishing another person's sentences, interrupting them. And the one question I often have when I try to keep in mind when I talk to someone now is this conversation intended to connect with this person and help them, or is it intended to flatter my ego?
Ooh, yes, that is a possibility. And that's where the one-upping, I think, is part of,
It
wouldn't that
is,
be something that would match with that?
and
Did
it's a
you
seemingly
mention?
subtle habit. It's a habit, and these habits can be broken.
Right. And I like that you mentioned that it can be, at least in your own perception, that an attempt to connect without even realizing what it is that you're doing. So by not paying attention. So I am loving these. Did you go through all eight? I've been trying to take notes, the communication killers that you talked about.
Right. Let me see if I can remember all of them. One is the comparative reality, answering, comparing, giving another story that can invalidate the other's story. Uh, Another one is sharing confidential information. You want
Oh,
to be really careful when you talk to somebody. 'Cause again, it's with the best of intentions. You could say somebody could share something with you, and you talk to somebody else about it because you're thinking that maybe you can help this person by getting some information to them. But the person didn't give you permission for that and wasn't comfortable with that. And then there's one upping. Uh,
so you talked about fixing a problem,
Fixing a
finishing their
problem, right.
sentences, interrupting. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of things that we can do that,
Thinking about what you want to say that instead of listening to what the person is saying.
oh, absolutely. And that's so easy to do, especially if you want to sound intelligent. I mean, we want to sound good. So we think about what we're going to say so that it will amaze the whole room. And instead, what we've done is we weren't paying attention to what the other person
Right.
was saying.
Right. Because the goal was flattering our ego rather than contributing to the conversation.
Yes, yes. So we have to be really comfortable with ourselves as we come into the conversation. I'm not here to try to impress you. I'm not here to fix you. What I want to do is I want to hear you. I want to understand you. I want to get to know you. And it kind of is like, don't worry about me. Right now, I'm just here to learn about you. And that I think works both ways, because if I'm sincerely listening and trying to get to know you and I care about you, I am without specific words, I am communicating to you that I'm trustworthy.
Yes, and it's a delicate balance because, and it's a difference between presence and pressure,
Mm.
really. But, it's very difficult to quiet your mind, especially when the purpose of the relationship is to try to help the person. So, but it's just about how you frame things, how you ask them, getting permission, not making assumptions or, being presumptuous with your counterpart, and being respectful at all times. And even in this interaction that we're having, I mean, you have me on here so that I can impart some information. And as we're talking, I'm realizing that even I'm not behaving perfectly. I'm not abiding by all seven of those principles at all times either. So it's just it's a process, and we all perfection remains an elusive goal for all of us.
That's okay. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because as we're learning our skill set, um, if we expect to be perfect, it puts pressure on us. But if we are genuinely trying, and I think in relationships, this matters too, that I don't have to be perfect, but I need you to be confident in me that I'm trying, and that if I make a mistake, I'm going to I'm going to admit it, and I'm going to apologize, and we're going
Yep.
to move forward. Um,
And if I may.
Yes, please.
We're also our own worst critic. And so I've one element that I often remind people of in coaching situations and selling especially is it's great to debrief after a sales call. Just know that you're going to be a lot harder on you than they would have been on you because they didn't know that you failed to do this or that you could have done this differently. And you still may have done an excellent job. So it's good to debrief, but don't ruminate or engage in self-recrimination because we're all, that's self-defeating. And every interaction is one more interaction towards excellence, if not perfection.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Well, this has been delightful. Danny, is there anything else you want to make sure we cover before we close today?
Uh, Only that if people want to learn more, how they can do that, if I may share my website.
Yes, please.
And it's just my name, dannybobrow.com. And we do have a foundation that I'm very passionate about. We raise money and volunteers, supplies and equipment for oral health education and treatment projects overseas. And we do that with an annual hiking event. So it's an opportunity to give back, but also gain a lot in terms of challenging yourself physically, meeting like-minded individuals, and sharing experiences in some of the most beautiful parts of the world. And that foundation is called Climb for a Cause. That's just ClimbForACause.org. And our event is for 2026 will be in the Banff area in September. We do have space available. We have 5 of 80 spots filled, 75 of 80 spots filled. But if you're interested, please hop on the website and reach out to me, and I'll be glad to get acquainted and let you know what it's all about.
How exciting. And now, this gives someone who's listening who thinks, oh my gosh, that would be so fun to try that myself, an opportunity to join in. Now, is there an entry level of athleticism that is required before you're allowed to go?
There's a certain amount of fitness that you should achieve by the day of the event, but among the support that we offer, first of all, I'm big on the concept of cause-related event marketing, which holds that any business can benefit when it has as its primary goal supporting a worthwhile cause, and then just not keeping your good works a secret. And you'll find that given a choice between competing services, the one that demonstrates a commitment to social responsibility will usually get the order. So we work with businesses who want to harness that to do well by doing good. But we also provide a training regimen, a 12-week program, and I carefully vet everyone to make sure that that we're setting them for success. But when we started Climb for a Cause in 1998, they were technical climbs, and we usually got a rather small turnout because of that. And so we'd rather broaden the appeal and the accessibility. So now they are non-technical. They're not very risky events, but they are physically challenging, and you do need to take them seriously. But if you commit to it, anybody with a reasonable baseline of health can do these events if they want to.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I loved your line of doing well by doing good. What a beautiful message. Danny, thank you so much for visiting with me today. I appreciate you.
Well, the pleasure was mine, Linda. I appreciate you as well. Thank you.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Theodore Roosevelt. He said, "Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care." Today, I invite our listeners to improve communication by truly caring about others. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.